Lumberjack lived in isolation for 25 years until he found a woman crying in the woods. William Anderson let the axe slip from his hands when he heard desperate sobs echoing through the dense forest. 25 years of living completely alone in a wooden cabin deep in Montana had made his ears sensitive to any sound that wasn't birdsong or the rustling of wind through the trees. The sound of a woman crying made him hesitate. His first instinct was to pretend he hadn't heard anything and go back inside. After all, he had sworn decades ago that he would never get involved with people again after his entire life collapsed like a house of cards. But the sobbing continued, now mixed with moans of pain that made his heart clench. Against all his instincts, William grabbed a flashlight and stepped out of the cabin, following the sound along the trail leading to the creek. That's when he saw her. A young woman, maybe in her early 20s, sat on a rock with her hands covering her face. Her blonde hair was dirty and tangled, her beige blouse torn in several places, and one leg of her jeans was stained with blood. She rocked back and forth, as if trying to comfort herself. "Miss?" William called softly, keeping his distance. "Are you hurt?" She lifted her face, and he saw her eyes were red and swollen from crying. There was a look of terror in them that he recognized immediately, the same expression he had seen in the mirror during the first years after his tragedy. "Please," she whispered hoarsely, "don't send me away. I have nowhere to go." William stood frozen, torn between compassion and the fear of getting involved. 25 years of isolation don't fade easily, but when she tried to stand and stumbled, he instinctively reached out. "Easy now. What happened to you?" "My ankle," she groaned. "I think I twisted it while running. And there are some scratches too." William noticed she kept glancing over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. He knew that behavior well. It was the look of someone running from something. "Are you lost?" "No," she answered too quickly. I mean, I know where I am, sort of. I just don't know where to go now." Silence stretched between them. William knew he should turn around and go back home. Other people's problems weren't his business. He had learned that the hard way. But something in her desperate manner reminded him of times he'd rather forget, times when he himself had needed help and found none. "Come on," he finally said. "Let me take a look at that ankle. Then you can tell me what's going on." She looked at him in surprise, as if kindness from a stranger was the last thing she expected. "Thank you," she murmured. "My name is Emma Johnson." "William," he replied, offering his arm for support. "William Anderson." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The walk to the cabin was slow. Emma limped badly and had to stop several times to rest. William noticed she kept looking around like a cornered animal. Whatever had made her run, it was serious. William's cabin was simple but cozy. 2 small windows let in natural light. A wooden table stood in the center of the main room, and an old armchair sat near the stone fireplace. It was the kind of place a person could call home if they didn't know the loneliness that echoed through its walls. "Sit here," he gestured to the armchair. "I'll get some medicine and clean cloths." As William rummaged through the cabinets, Emma looked around curiously. The house was organized in a way that showed someone with plenty of time on their hands lived there. Every object had its exact place. There was no mess, but there were also no signs that other people ever visited. "How long have you lived here?" she asked when he returned with a basin of warm water and some cloths. 25 years, William answered without looking at her, focused on cleaning the scratches on Emma's leg. "Alone?" He paused for a second, then continued dressing the wound. "Alone." Emma realized she had touched on a sensitive subject and fell silent. William finished treating her injuries and carefully bandaged her ankle. His hands were rough from working with wood, but his touch was gentle. "There," he said. "It'll hurt for a few days, but nothing's broken. The scratches will heal soon too." "Thank you," Emma murmured. "You're very kind." William stepped away and washed his hands at the sink. Through the window's reflection, she could see he was a man in his early 50s, tall and strong, with graying brown hair and a scruffy beard. He had the build of someone who worked hard every day, but there was a sadness in his eyes that stood out. "Now tell me," he said, turning to her, "what are you running from?" Emma lowered her head and fidgeted with her hands. William waited patiently. He had learned that some stories needed time to come out. "From my family," she finally said. "They wanted to force me to marry a man I barely know." "Arranged marriage? Worse than that?" Tears began rolling down her face. "My father has debts, a lot of debts, and Richard offered to pay them all in exchange for me." William felt an old anger rise in his chest. He knew stories like this. He had grown up in a time when women were treated as property, and he thought things had changed. "So you ran?" "I tried talking to them first," Emma continued. "I begged my father not to do it. I told him I'd work, that I'd help pay the debts another way. But he said I didn't understand how the world worked." "What kind of man is this Richard?" Emma shuddered. "The kind who hits women," she whispered. "His first wife left home bruised more than once, until one day she just disappeared. No one knows where she went, but everyone suspects why." William clenched his fists. Men like that were cowards who preyed on the weak. They were the kind of people he'd learned to avoid after his life turned upside down. "So you ran?" "Last night," Emma confirmed. "It was my last chance. The wedding was supposed to be this morning. I climbed out my bedroom window and ran. I didn't know where. I just wanted to get away." "And how did you end up here?" "I walked all night. By sunrise, I was lost. I kept going until I couldn't anymore." William grew thoughtful. The situation was complicated. If her family was really searching for her, it wouldn't take long for them to reach this area. And he didn't want trouble. But at the same time, he couldn't imagine handing this girl back to people who wanted to force her into marriage with a violent man, especially because he stopped that train of thought. He had promised himself he wouldn't dwell on the past. "You can stay here tonight," he finally said. "Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do." "Really?" Emma's eyes filled with tears of relief. "You'd do that for me?" "Just tonight," William repeated, more to himself than to her. "After that, you'll have to find somewhere else." Emma nodded quickly. One day was better than nothing, and maybe in that time she could think of a solution. William made tea for both of them and reheated some soup he'd made the day before. They ate in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. After the meal, William showed her a small room at the back of the cabin. "It was meant for storing supplies," he explained. "But there's an old bed in there. You can rest." "Thank you," Emma said. "You're being very kind to me." William just nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Alone in the living room, he sat in the armchair and stared at the fire in the fireplace. It had been a long time since he had another person in the house. The sound of someone breathing in the back room brought back memories he was sure he had buried forever. Memories of a time when that cabin wasn't just a place to hide from the world. A time when there was laughter, dinner conversations, and little feet running across the wooden floor. A time when he wasn't alone. William shook his head, trying to push the thoughts away. Emma would only stay for a day. Then she'd leave, and he'd return to his lonely routine. It was better that way for everyone. But as he got ready for bed, he couldn't ignore the strange feeling that something in his life was about to change, and he didn't know if he was ready for it. The next morning, William woke to the smell of coffee. For a moment, he was confused. It had been so long since anyone had cooked in his house that he'd forgotten how good it felt to wake up to that aroma. When he stepped out of his room, he found Emma in the kitchen stirring a pot. "Good morning," she said with a shy smile. "I hope you don't mind. I found some coffee and thought I'd make it to thank you for your hospitality." William stood in the doorway watching. There was something familiar about the scene that made him uneasy. "You didn't have to," he murmured. "I wanted to," Emma replied. "I also made scrambled eggs. You had some in the fridge." They had breakfast together, and William noticed Emma avoided looking at the window. She was still afraid someone might come looking for her. "I need to go to work," he said when they finished. I've got some trees to cut down on the other side of the property. Can I help? No, William answered too quickly. I mean, you should rest your ankle, and it's hard work. Emma nodded, but he saw the disappointment on her face. She was probably used to keeping busy and didn't like sitting still. Just, he hesitated, don't leave the cabin, okay? If someone shows up, hide. Okay. William grabbed his axe and saw and headed into the woods, but as he worked, he couldn't stop thinking about the girl he'd left at home. There was something about her that unsettled him, not in a bad way, but in a way that stirred feelings he was certain he'd buried. Maybe it was how she'd offered to help, or how she'd made coffee without being asked. Small acts of kindness he hadn't received in a long time. Or maybe it was the fact that she was running from something terrible, and it reminded him of what it felt like to be desperate with nowhere to turn. When he returned for lunch, he found the cabin cleaner than he'd left it. Emma had washed the dishes, straightened up a few things, and even swept the floor. You didn't have to do that, he said. I want to help somehow, Emma replied. I don't like sitting around doing nothing. Over lunch, she asked a few questions about his life. William answered in short, clipped words, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. He was used to silence and solitude. Have you always worked with wood? She asked. Not always. What did you do before? William tensed. Different things. Emma realized he didn't want to talk about the past and change the subject, but the curiosity remained. There was something about William Anderson that didn't add up. He spoke like an educated man, had books on the shelf, and there were signs that this solitary life hadn't always been his choice. In the afternoon, while William worked outside, Emma explored the cabin a bit. She wasn't snooping, just getting familiar with the place. That's when she found a shoebox under his bed. She knew she shouldn't touch it, but something made her open it. Inside were old photos of a younger William, clean-shaven, wearing a suit and smiling at the camera. Beside him, a beautiful woman with dark hair, and in her arms, a little girl around 5 years old, with golden curls and a toothless grin. Emma's heart clenched. William had a family, and judging by the state of the photos and the fact he lived alone, something terrible had happened to them. She quickly put the photos back in the box and returned it to its place. Now she understood why he lived in isolation, and why he'd been so reluctant to help her. When William returned from work, Emma was preparing dinner. She'd found some ingredients and improvised a simple but tasty meal. "Smells great," he remarked, using an expression he'd learned when he was younger. "Smells good," Emma corrected with a smile. "I learned to cook from my grandmother. She said a good meal could heal a lot of things." They ate in silence, but it was more comfortable than the night before. Emma didn't ask personal questions, and William seemed more at ease. It was after dinner that she gathered her courage. "William," she said softly. "I saw the photos." He froze, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. "You shouldn't have gone through my things. I'm sorry, it wasn't on purpose. I was just..." "You were snooping." His voice turned cold. "Exactly the kind of thing I expected if I let someone into my home." Emma flinched at the harshness of his words. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "You want to know about my life?" William stood abruptly. "You want to know why I live alone out here in the middle of nowhere?" Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but she didn't answer. "I had a family," he continued, his voice heavy with pain. "A wonderful wife and a little girl who was the most precious thing in the world to me, and because of my negligence, my stupidity, I lost them both." William. "My daughter disappeared during a family outing." The words came out like each one was a stab. "I got distracted for 5 minutes, 5 damn minutes, and when I looked again, she was gone." Emma covered her mouth, horrified. "We searched for weeks. Police, firefighters, volunteers, everyone looked. But we never found her. And my wife never forgave me. I never forgave myself. I'm so sorry," Emma whispered. "She blamed me until the day she left this world," William went on. "And she was right. If I'd paid attention, if I hadn't gotten distracted, our little girl would still be alive. Tears now streamed freely down Emma's face. That's why I came here, William finished, to stay away from everyone, so I wouldn't hurt anyone else with my incompetence. It wasn't your fault, Emma said through her tears. Of course it was, he shot back. And that's why you're leaving first thing tomorrow. I won't let anyone else get hurt because of me. William stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Emma stood alone in the kitchen crying, not just for his tragedy, but for the harsh way he treated himself. She could understand the pain of losing a child. Though she'd never been a mother, she could imagine how devastating it would be. But she could also see that William had been punishing himself for 25 years over something that probably wasn't truly his fault. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, William spent the night walking through the woods. He was furious with himself for telling his story to Emma. He had promised never to speak about the past with anyone again. It was too painful and pointless. But something in the way she looked at him with such understanding and kindness had broken his defenses. Now he felt exposed and vulnerable. When he returned home in the morning, he expected to find Emma packing her things to leave. Instead, she was in the kitchen making breakfast as if nothing had happened. "Good morning," she said calmly. "I thought you'd be gone." "I am leaving," Emma replied. "But first, I want to finish our conversation." William sat at the table, reluctant. "There's nothing left to talk about." "Yes, there is," she said, sitting across from him. "You told me your story yesterday. Now I want to tell you mine." "Emma, just listen," she interrupted. "Please." William fell silent, and she continued. "I didn't run away just because I didn't want to marry Richard," Emma began. "I ran because I'm expecting a baby." William looked up, surprised. "And the father?" "He's a man I met a few months ago." Tears welled in her eyes. "He was passing through town for work. We fell in love, but he had to leave. He doesn't know I'm pregnant." "Why didn't you tell him?" "Because I found out after he was already gone," Emma explained, "and I have no way to find him. I only know his first name, and that he works somewhere in rural Montana." William began to understand. "And your family found out?" "My father was furious," she confirmed. "He said I had dishonored the family." That's when Richard showed up with his proposal. He said he'd marry me and raise the child as his own, in exchange for settling my father's debts. But he made it very clear that as soon as the baby was born, he'd get rid of it." Emma started crying. "He said he wouldn't raise another man's child, and I couldn't let that happen." William's heart ached. Emma's situation was even worse than he'd imagined. She wasn't just running from a forced marriage, she was protecting her child's life. "That's why you ran." "That's why I ran," she confirmed. "I'd rather raise my child in poverty, but with love, than hand them over to a man who could hurt them." William was silent for a long time. There was a cruel irony in the situation. He had lost a daughter by accident, and now here was a woman in his home fighting to protect the child she carried. "How many months?" he finally asked. 4. William looked at her differently now. Now that he knew, he could see the signs. Her slightly fuller face, the way she sometimes instinctively placed a hand on her belly. "And now? What's your plan?" "I don't have one," Emma admitted. "I just know I can't go home, and I need to find a way to survive until the baby comes." "Do you have other family? Friends?" "My mother died when I was young. My father has 2 brothers, but they agree with him about the marriage. And my friends," she shook her head. "They're all afraid of my father. He has influence in town." William stood and walked to the window. Outside, sunlight filtered through the trees, casting patterns of light and shadow on the forest floor. It was a beautiful day, the kind of day his daughter used to play in the yard. He shook his head, pushing the memory away. "You can stay a few more days," he said without turning, "until you figure out what to do." "Really?" Emma's voice filled with hope. "A few days," William repeated, "but you'll have to help with the chores. And don't touch my things." "Of course, thank you, William. You don't know how much this means to me." William simply nodded and left for work. But as he chopped down trees, He couldn't stop thinking about their conversation. Emma was in an impossible situation, pregnant and with nowhere to go. No matter how hard he tried to keep his distance, he couldn't ignore that she needed help. Maybe it was because he saw in her the same determination his wife had shown when she was pregnant. Or maybe it was because he knew what it felt like to be alone and abandoned by the world. The following days settled into a strange but comfortable routine. William worked in the woods during the day and Emma took care of the house. She cooked, cleaned, and even mended some of his torn clothes. At night, they ate dinner together and talked a little. Emma told him about her life before the pregnancy, about her dreams of studying nursing. William listened but said little about himself. It was during one of these quiet evening conversations when they heard the sound of a car approaching. Emma immediately paled. "They found me," she whispered. William stood and went to the window. A black car was pulling up in front of the cabin. "Go to the back room," he said quietly, "and lock the door." "William, go." Emma ran to the bedroom while William went to answer the door. Outside stood 3 men. One of them, older, had a hard expression that promised nothing good. "Good evening," the man said. "I'm Thomas Johnson. I'm looking for my daughter." William kept his expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do," another man spoke. He was younger, well-dressed, but there was something cruel in his eyes. Probably that Richard fellow. "A young woman passed through here. Blonde, petite. Our bride ran away from the wedding." "Your bride?" William repeated, letting a hint of disdain slip into his voice. "That's right." Richard stepped closer. "And when I find her, she'll learn you don't run from me." "I haven't seen any young woman," William lied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm tired." Thomas held the door as William tried to close it. "We have information that she came through this area," he said, "and your cabin is the only building for miles." "Then your information is wrong." The third man, who hadn't spoken until now, stepped forward. "Can we take a look?" "No," William replied firmly. "This is private property, and you're not the police." "Don't make this difficult, old man." Richard lost his patience. "Just let us in to see no one's here, then we'll leave." "I said no." The tension in the air was rising. William could see the 3 men growing aggressive, and he was alone, but he wasn't going to let them take Emma. Then they heard another car approaching. "Expecting someone else?" Thomas asked suspiciously. William shook his head, equally confused. He hadn't had visitors in years. The car stopped behind the other, and a woman in her 60s stepped out. William recognized her immediately. It was Mrs. Sullivan, who lived on a farm a few miles away. They hadn't spoken in years, but she occasionally stopped by to trade supplies. "William," she called cheerfully, "how nice to find you at home." She approached with a basket in hand, completely ignoring the 3 men. "I brought some fresh eggs and milk," she continued, "and I also wanted to check on Emma. I heard she's here with you." William tensed. Mrs. Sullivan was clearly trying to help, but she had just revealed that Emma was indeed there. "Emma?" Thomas turned to her. "You know my daughter?" "I do," Mrs. Sullivan replied calmly. "A sweet girl, and brave. She did the right thing running from that wedding." "Where is she?" Richard moved toward the door. "Hey!" William blocked the path. "You're not entering my house, Yes, we are." Richard pushed William, who stumbled and fell. That's when Mrs. Sullivan stepped in. "Stop this," she shouted. "What kind of man shoves an old man?" "Back off, old woman," Richard snapped. "This isn't your business. It is my business when I see a bunch of bullies attacking my neighbors." Thomas tried to calm the situation. "Ma'am, we just want our daughter back. She's sick, confused. She doesn't know what she's doing." "Nonsense," Mrs. Sullivan replied. "Emma knows exactly what she's doing, and she has every right to choose who she wants to marry." While the argument continued outside, Emma was listening from the bedroom. She knew she couldn't let William face those men alone, especially after everything he'd done for her. She took a deep breath and stepped out. "Dad," she said, appearing at the door. Everyone turned to her. William motioned for her to go back inside, but she shook her head. Emma! Thomas rushed toward her. Sweetheart, I'm so glad you're okay. We were so worried. Don't pretend, Emma replied, stepping back. You weren't worried about me. You were worried about the money. Don't talk to your father like that, Richard cut in. You've caused us a lot of trouble and now you'll pay for it. I'm not going anywhere with you, Emma said firmly. Oh, you are, Richard stepped closer. We're engaged, and you'll honor your commitment. I never agreed to marry you, my father did. Same difference. William got up, still sore from the fall. She said she doesn't want to go, he said. I think that should be enough. And who are you to interfere? Thomas turned to him. Just an old man who lives alone in the woods. I'm someone who recognizes when a person is being mistreated. Mistreated? Richard laughed. I'm offering her a good life, a home, security. In exchange for what? William asked. Richard hesitated for a second. In exchange for being an obedient wife. What about the baby? Emma asked. Tell them about the baby. William saw Thomas and the third man exchange glances. Clearly they knew something. What baby? Richard feigned innocence. Don't pretend, Emma shot back. You made it very clear what you'd do to my child. Mrs. Sullivan looked between them, trying to understand. Emma's expecting a baby? Yes, Emma confirmed. And he threatened to get rid of the child as soon as it's born. I never said that, Richard lied. You did. In front of my father. You said you wouldn't raise another man's child. The silence that followed was heavy. Mrs. Sullivan stared at Richard in disgust, while Thomas looked uncomfortable. Sweetheart, Thomas tried. Maybe we can talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, Emma interrupted. I won't hand my child over to a man who threatens to hurt them. Your child? Richard laughed bitterly. Your bastard child, you mean? That's when William lost his patience. Watch your mouth, he said, stepping toward Richard. Or what? Richard taunted. What are you going to do, old man? Whatever it takes to protect a mother and her child. The tension was reaching its limit when Mrs. Sullivan stepped in again. Enough, she shouted. This has gone too far. She turned to Thomas. You should be ashamed of yourself, forcing your own daughter to marry a man who threatens an innocent child. You don't understand, Thomas tried to explain. I have debts, and that justifies selling your daughter? Mrs. Sullivan was furious. What kind of father does that? The kind who wants to see his daughter well married. The third man finally spoke. He was older than Richard, probably a relative. Well married? Mrs. Sullivan laughed humorlessly. With a man who hits women? Who said I hit women? Richard defended himself. The whole town knows what happened to your first wife, Mrs. Sullivan shot back. No use denying it. The accusations were flying, and William realized the situation was spiraling out of control. He needed to find a way to make those men leave without taking Emma. Listen, he said, raising his hand. Let's handle this like civilized people. There's nothing to handle, Richard replied. Emma is coming with me now. I'm not, Emma said firmly. You don't have a choice. Richard took a step toward her, but William blocked his path. Stop right there. Move aside, old man. William, be careful, Emma murmured. Mrs. Sullivan was tense too. The situation was about to turn violent. Then they heard another noise, this time several cars approaching. Who's that now? Thomas asked, irritated. The car stopped and a group of people stepped out. William recognized some distant neighbors, folks he hadn't seen in years. Among them were Bob, who lived on a nearby farm, and Sarah, who ran a small roadside shop. Mrs. Sullivan, Bob approached. Bob. We got your message. William looked at Mrs. Sullivan, confused. When had she sent a message? What message? Richard asked suspiciously. Calling for help, Sarah answered. You said some troublemakers were threatening William and a pregnant woman. William realized Mrs. Sullivan had set this up. Somehow she'd foreseen things could turn ugly and called for reinforcements. Well, well, Bob said, eyeing the three men. 3 against 1. Real brave. This isn't your business, Thomas tried. Oh, it is, Sarah countered. William's our neighbor, and we won't let anyone threaten him. Richard glanced around and saw they were outnumbered. Besides the neighbors, Mrs. Sullivan had clearly told everyone the story, and they were on Emma's side. "Let's go," he told Thomas. "This isn't over." "It is over," Emma replied. "I won't change my mind." "Your daughter's an adult," Bob said to Thomas. "She has the right to choose her own path." "And if she chooses to stay here," Sarah added, "we'll stand by her." Thomas stared at his daughter for a long moment. William could see the conflict on his face. It was clear he loved Emma, but he was also desperate because of the debts. "Emma," he finally said, "come home, let's talk. Maybe we'll find another way." "What kind of way?" Emma asked. "I don't know yet, but we'll figure something out." Emma shook her head. "Dad, I love you, but I don't trust you anymore, and as long as Richard's around, I won't go back." "So you'd rather stay out here in the middle of nowhere with this stranger?" Richard asked scornfully. "I'd rather stay with someone who respects me." The answer clearly stung Richard's pride. "You'll regret this," he said. "When you need help, you'll have nowhere to turn." "Oh, she will," Mrs. Sullivan cut in. "She's got a whole community here ready to stand by her." Richard looked around one last time and knew he'd lost the battle. "Let's go," he told the others. "Not worth wasting time on this." They headed for the car, but Thomas hesitated. "Emma," he called, "if you change your mind—" "I won't," she replied. "But thank you for caring." Thomas nodded sadly and got in the car. The three men drove off, leaving behind a heavy silence. "Thank you," Emma said to everyone. "I don't know how to repay you." "No need," Bob answered. "We did what was right." "What if they come back?" William asked. "We'll keep watch," Sarah promised. "And if you need anything, just send word." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. After everyone had left, William and Emma remained alone on the porch, still processing what had happened. "How did Mrs. Sullivan know I was here?" Emma asked. "She probably saw you when she went to fetch water from the creek," William replied. "Or when you were hanging laundry. She has eyes like a hawk." "And why did she help?" William grew thoughtful. "Mrs. Sullivan lost a daughter too," he finally said. "About 15 years ago, cancer. Maybe she sees in you the daughter she can no longer protect." Emma felt her eyes fill with tears. "Everyone here has suffered some kind of loss, haven't they?" "It's a small community," William confirmed. "Everyone knows each other's pain." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun set through the trees. "William," Emma finally said, "thank you for everything. I didn't do much." "Yes, you did. You risked your safety for me." "Why?" William took his time answering. "Because no one should go through that alone," he said. "And because maybe I need to learn to forgive myself." "What do you mean?" "All these years I've lived thinking I didn't deserve happiness, that I didn't deserve help or companionship. But seeing your situation, I realize I might have been too hard on myself." Emma turned to him. "Do you think your wife never truly forgave you?" William sighed. "I don't know. She grew so bitter after our daughter disappeared. She couldn't even look at me without crying. But that doesn't mean she blamed you. Maybe she was just in too much pain to express her feelings." "Maybe," William murmured. "But it's too late now. It's never too late to forgive yourself." They went inside, and Emma made tea for both of them. It was clear things had changed. It was no longer just about her staying a few days. After the confrontation with Richard and his father, she had nowhere else to go. "Can I stay?" she asked directly. "At least until the baby is born." William looked at her for a long moment. "It'll be hard," he said. "I'm not used to living with others, and when the baby comes, it'll get even more complicated. I know, but I promise I'll help with everything, and as soon as I can get back on my feet, I'll find another place." "What if the baby's father shows up?" "If he does, we'll talk," Emma replied. "But I won't let my child grow up without knowing his father." William nodded. "All right, but we need some ground rules." "Of course. First rule, we respect each other's space. Second rule, we share household chores. Third rule, no personal questions unless the other person wants to talk." "Agreed." Emma smiled. Can I add a rule? What? Fourth rule. We try to be patient with each other. We're learning to live together. William smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. Agreed. The following days were an adjustment. William was truly out of practice living with others, and Emma had to learn to respect his moments of silence and solitude. But little by little, they developed a routine that worked. William worked in the woods in the morning. Emma took care of the house. In the afternoon, he taught her practical things like mending clothes and preserving food. At night, they talked a little before each retreated to their own space. It was during one of these evening conversations that Emma shared more about the baby's father. His name is Jason, she said. Jason Miller. He worked for a company doing some business in our town. What kind of business, May? Something to do with lumber. I think they bought wood from local sawmills. William raised an eyebrow. Lumber? Yes. He said he traveled a lot through the countryside, buying quality lumber for a company in Bozeman. Do you remember the name of the company? Not entirely. Something with Anderson, Miller and Sons? Or Miller and Sons? I'm not sure. William became thoughtful. He knew several lumber companies in the area, and the name Miller sounded familiar. What was he like? Tall, dark-haired, green eyes? Emma smiled at the memory. Very kind and smart. He talked about his dreams of having his own company someday. And did you fall in love? Quickly, she admitted. I know it sounds crazy, but it was an instant connection, like we'd known each other for years. William could understand. It had been the same with his wife. How long did he stay in town? 2 weeks. They were the 2 happiest weeks of my life. And then? Then he had to leave for another job. He promised he'd come back when the contract was over, but he never did. Maybe he ran into trouble, William suggested. Or maybe he couldn't find you. Maybe, Emma murmured, but I can't wait forever. Of course not, but it would be good if he knew about the baby. I agree, but how will I find him? William thought for a moment. He knew some people in the lumber business. Maybe he could ask around discreetly. Leave it to me, he said. I'll see if I can find anything out. Really? Emma's eyes lit up. No promises, but I'll try. The following week, William started making calls. He contacted a few sawmills and companies he knew, asking about businesses in Bozeman that bought lumber from the area. It was during one of these calls that he got lucky. Miller and Sons? The owner of a sawmill repeated. Sure, I know them. Good company. I've worked with them for years. Do you know a Jason who works there? Jason Miller, the owner's son. Of course I know him, serious, hard-working young man. William's heart raced. Jason was the owner's son. That explained why he dreamed of having his own company. Do you have their contact? I do. Why the interest? William hesitated. He couldn't tell the truth, but he needed a convincing excuse. I have a property with quality lumber. I was thinking of selling. Ah, I see. I'll give you the number. William wrote it down and stared at it for a long time after hanging up. He had the information Emma needed, but he wasn't sure if he should use it. What if Jason didn't want to know about the baby? What if he was married? What if Emma showing up complicated his life? On the other hand, he had a right to know he was going to be a father, and Emma had a right to give her child that chance. When he got home, he found Emma organizing some baby clothes she was making from scraps. The scene touched him deeply. She was preparing to be a mother with such care, even in difficult circumstances. Emma, he called. Hi, she smiled. How was your day? I got some information about Jason. She stopped what she was doing immediately. What? William told her about the call and what he'd found out. The owner's son? She repeated, surprised. He never mentioned that. Maybe he wanted you to like him for who he was, not his family's position. That makes sense, Emma murmured. Jason was always modest. I have the company's number, William said. Do you want me to call? Emma suddenly grew nervous. I don't know. What if he doesn't want to hear from me? What if he's forgotten? What if he's been looking for you too? She thought for a moment. Would you call for me? Of course. But don't mention the baby yet, she asked. First, let's see how he reacts to my name. William agreed. The next day, he called Miller and Sons. "Hello, I'd like to speak with Jason Miller," he said when they answered. "One moment, please." William waited, with Emma beside him, nervously squeezing his hand. "Jason Miller," a male voice answered. "Jason, my name is William Anderson. I'm calling about Emma Johnson." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Emma?" The voice changed completely. "How is she? Where is she? I've been looking for her for months." William and Emma exchanged glances. It was clear from his tone that Jason still had feelings for her. "She's fine," William replied. "She's with me at a rural property in the countryside." "Thank God," Jason sighed in relief. "Can I talk to her?" William handed the phone to Emma, who was trembling. "Jason," she said softly. "Emma, my dear, where have you been? I went back to your town twice and they told me you'd disappeared. It's a long story. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that you're okay. Where exactly are you? I'll come get you right now." Emma looked at William, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm at William Anderson's property, about 120 miles from Bozeman. But Jason, I need to tell you something important." "What is it?" Emma took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The silence on the other end lasted so long she thought the call had dropped. "Jason, are you still there?" "I'm here." His voice sounded different now. "Pregnant. How far along?" 5 months. Is it mine?" "Yes." Another silence. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I found out after you'd already left and I didn't know how to reach you." "My God, Emma, I'm so happy we're having a baby." Tears began streaming down Emma's face. "You're really happy?" "Of course I am. I'm going crazy wanting to see you and to talk about everything. Give me the exact address." William took the phone and gave detailed directions to the property. "I'm leaving Bozeman right now," Jason said. "I'll be there in about 3 hours." After hanging up, Emma broke down in tears, but this time they were tears of relief and happiness. "He's coming," she said between sobs. "He's really coming." William smiled. He said he was happy about the news. "He did," Emma laughed through her tears. "I can't believe it. I thought I'd never see him again." "Sometimes things work out," William said. "Not always, but sometimes." Emma spent the rest of the afternoon getting ready and trying to calm her nerves. William could see she was both anxious and excited. "What if he changes his mind on the way?" she asked for the 10th time. "He won't," William replied patiently. "From the sound of his voice, it's clear he loves you." "What if he doesn't like how I look now? I'm heavier with breakouts." "Emma, you're pregnant, not sick, and any man worth his salt will think you're beautiful just as you are." When they finally heard the sound of a car approaching, Emma froze. "I can't," she said. "I'm too nervous." "Yes, you can," William encouraged her. "You're the bravest woman I know." The car stopped in front of the cabin, and a tall, dark-haired man stepped out. Even from a distance, William could see the anticipation on his face. Jason looked at the cabin, then at the people on the porch. When his eyes met Emma's, he stopped walking. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then Jason started running toward her. Emma rushed down the porch steps and ran to meet him. They met in the middle of the yard and embraced as if the world were ending. William watched the reunion with a bittersweet smile. He remembered what it felt like to have that kind of love, and he was happy they had found each other. "I missed you so much," Jason murmured, kissing Emma's face. So much." "Me too," she cried. "I thought I'd never see you again. I'm sorry it took me so long to come back. I had contract issues. Then my father got sick. When I finally managed to return to your town, no one knew where you were. It's all right now," Emma said. "You're here." Jason stepped back a little to look at her. "Let me see." He placed his hands on her belly. "Our baby is in there." "Yes," Emma smiled, already moving. "Really?" Jason's eyes filled with tears. "Can I feel it?" Emma took his hand and placed it on a specific spot on her belly. They stayed quiet for a moment. "There," Jason exclaimed. "I felt it, a kick." "Or she," Emma laughed. Jason kissed her tenderly. "I love you," he said, "so much. And I love our baby too." "I love you too." William felt like an intruder in this intimate moment, but didn't want to interrupt. It was only when Jason looked his way that he stepped forward. "You must be William." Jason extended his hand. "Thank you so much for taking care of Emma. I don't know how to thank you." "No need," William replied. "She took care of me too." "How so?" "It's a long story," Emma said. "Let's go inside. We have a lot to talk about." Inside the cabin, as Emma prepared coffee, Jason told his side of the story. "When I finished the job in your town, I went straight to another contract in Wyoming," he explained. "I planned to return in 2 weeks, but my father had a heart attack. I spent 2 months in the hospital with him." "How is he now?" Emma asked. "Much better, but it was a big scare. And when I finally got back to look for you, your neighbor told me you'd disappeared. No one knew where." "I ran away," Emma admitted. "My father wanted to force me to marry another man." Jason tensed. "Force you?" Emma told the whole story. Her father's debts, Richard, the threats to the baby. Jason grew angrier as he listened. "This Richard threatened our child?" he asked, his voice dangerous. "Jason, calm down." Emma placed a hand on his arm. "It's over. I'm safe here. But that man is still out there, and so is your father." "They won't bother me anymore," Emma said. "The neighbors made it clear they'd protect me." Jason looked at William. "Thank you," he said simply, "for protecting my family. Like I said, no need to thank me. I do. And I want to repay you for your expenses." "There were none," William replied. "Emma worked for her food and lodging," Jason insisted, but William wouldn't take any money. It was clear he'd enjoyed having Emma around, even if he wouldn't admit it. "So, now what?" Emma asked. "What do we do?" "Now we get married," Jason said without hesitation. "If you want, of course." "Of course I do," she smiled. "But where will we live?" "In Bozeman. I have a house there. Not too big, but comfortable. And it'll be perfect for our family." William's heart tightened. He knew this moment would come, but he wasn't ready to say goodbye to Emma. "When are you thinking of leaving?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Well," Jason glanced at Emma, "we don't want to impose longer than necessary. Maybe tomorrow." "You're not imposing," William said quickly. "Stay as long as you need." Emma sensed his reluctance. "William," she said gently, "you'll always be welcome in our home. Always. Thank you." That night, Jason slept on the couch while Emma stayed in the back room. William stayed up late, listening to the soft murmur of conversation from the living room. Jason and Emma were catching up, making plans for the future. It was good to know she'd be happy, but at the same time, William couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing something important. Over the last few months, Emma had brought life to that cabin. Laughter, conversation, the smell of good food. Things he hadn't realized he'd missed until they were back. When she left, the silence would return, and this time William wasn't sure he could bear it. The next morning he woke up early and left for work before the others were awake. He didn't want to face goodbyes just yet. But when he returned for lunch, he found Jason helping Emma pack her few belongings. "Leaving already?" he asked. "We thought it best," Jason replied. "I want to take Emma for medical checkups in Bozeman. Make sure everything's all right with the baby." "That's a good idea," William agreed. "And we also want to get married soon," Emma added, "before my belly gets too big for a wedding dress." She was radiant with happiness, and William forced a smile. "I'm very happy for you." "William," Emma stepped closer to him, "how can I ever thank you for everything?" "You already have." "No, I haven't. You saved my life, and my child's life." "You saved mine too," William said softly. "What do you mean?" William looked at her for a long moment. "You reminded me how good it feels not to be alone. I'd forgotten." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes. "You don't have to be alone. You could come live with us in Bozeman." "No," William shook his head. "This is my place, but thank you for the offer." "Then promise you'll visit," Jason said. "When the baby's born, we want you to be the godfather." William's throat tightened. "It would be an honor. They finished packing and loaded the car. William stood on the porch, watching. "Take good care of her," he told Jason. "I will. And thank you for taking care of her when I couldn't." Emma walked over and hugged William tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For taking me in, for protecting me, for helping me find Jason, but mostly for teaching me there's always hope." "Thank you for teaching me the same thing," William replied. They pulled apart, and Emma got into the car. Jason waved one last time and started the engine. William stayed on the porch, watching the car disappear down the dirt road until it vanished among the trees. Then he went back inside the cabin. The silence was deafening. The house felt bigger and emptier than before. William sat in his armchair and stared at the spot where Emma used to sit and talk with him. For the first time in 25 years, William Anderson felt truly alone, and he realized it might be time to make some changes in his life. 3 months later, William was chopping wood when he heard the familiar sound of a car approaching. He thought it might be Mrs. Sullivan with her groceries, but when he looked up, he saw it was Jason's car. His heart raced. Had something happened to Emma or the baby? He dropped the axe and ran toward the car. Jason stepped out smiling, and from the passenger side came Emma carrying a bundle in her arms. "William," she called out joyfully, "come meet your goddaughter." William approached carefully. Emma pulled back the blanket from the baby's face, revealing a perfect little girl with dark hair and curious eyes. "She's beautiful," William whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "Want to hold her?" Emma offered. William hesitated. It had been so long since he'd held a baby. "Come on," Emma insisted. "She needs to meet her godfather." With the utmost care, William took the child into his arms. She looked up at him curiously, without crying. "What's her name?" he asked. "Olivia," Emma answered. "Olivia Anderson Miller." William looked up, surprised. "Anderson? In your honor," Jason explained. "Without you, we never would have found each other again." William felt his eyes fill with tears. It had been so long since he'd cried. "Thank you," he murmured. "It's the greatest honor of my life." They went inside the cabin, and Emma made coffee while Jason told William about the past few months. The wedding had been simple but beautiful, the birth had gone smoothly, and they were completely in love with their daughter. "And you?" William asked. "How's married life treating you?" "Wonderful," Emma smiled. "Jason is an amazing father. He wakes up in the middle of the night to help with Olivia, changes diapers, gives her bottle." "It's the least I can do," Jason laughed. "I missed the first months of the pregnancy. I won't miss anything else." William watched the happy family with a mix of joy and melancholy. It was good to see Emma so fulfilled, but it also reminded him of what he himself had lost. "William," Emma said, as if reading his thoughts, "how are you? Really?" "I'm fine," he replied automatically. "No, you're not," she insisted. "I can see it in your eyes." William sighed. "It's been hard," he admitted. "After you left, the loneliness got heavier." "Why don't you come live with us?" Jason asked. "The offer still stands." "Thank you, but I can't. This is my home." "Then how about more frequent visits?" Emma suggested. "We can come here once a month and you can go to Bozeman whenever you want." William nodded. The idea made him happy. "I'd like that very much." They spent the rest of the day together, and William helped take care of Olivia. It was amazing how quickly his fatherly instincts came back. He remembered exactly how to hold a baby, how to soothe her cries, how to play to make her smile. "You're a natural with kids," Emma observed. "You must have been a wonderful father." William's chest tightened, but for the first time, the pain wasn't just sadness. There was also gratitude for the good memories he had with his daughter. "I tried to be," he said simply. When it was time for them to leave, William felt better than he had in months. The visit had filled the house with positive energy again. "We'll be back next month," Emma promised, hugging him. "I'll be waiting." After they left, William didn't feel as lost as he had the first time. There was still silence, but now he knew it wouldn't last forever. He had a family who cared about him, even if they weren't blood. And maybe that was enough to start rebuilding his life. The following month settled into a new routine. Emma, Jason, and Olivia visited William once a month, and he went to Bozeman from time to time. Slowly, he began opening up to the world again. It was during one of these visits that Mrs. Sullivan arrived with unexpected news. "William," she said, clearly agitated, "I need to talk to you." "What is it, Mrs. Sullivan?" "It's about your daughter." William froze. Emma, who was nursing Olivia, looked up immediately. "My daughter?" "A woman came to town yesterday," Mrs. Sullivan continued, "asking about a family named Anderson who used to live here years ago. She said she's looking for her father." William's world began to spin. "What woman?" "A young woman in her early 20s, blonde hair, green eyes. She has a birthmark on her right arm." William sank heavily into a chair. His daughter had a birthmark in the exact spot Mrs. Sullivan had described. "Where is she now?" he asked hoarsely. "At the town hotel. She said she'd stay a few days to gather information." Emma stood quickly. "William, it could be her, it could be your daughter." "I don't know," William murmured. "I've been disappointed so many times." "But what if it is?" Jason interjected. "You can't let this chance slip away." "And if it's not? How do I handle another heartbreak?" Emma knelt in front of him. "William, look at me. You taught me there's always hope, that we should never give up. Now it's time to follow your own advice." William looked at her, then at Jason, then at little Olivia sleeping in her mother's arms. They were his family now. No matter what happened, he wasn't alone anymore. "Let's go," he said, standing up. "Let's head into town." The trip to town was tense. William couldn't stop thinking about all the possibilities. What if it really was his daughter? What if she never forgave him for failing to protect her? What if she had spent all these years hating him? When they reached the hotel, William hesitated. "I don't know if I can do this," he said. "Yes, you can," Emma took his hand. "We're right here with you." They entered the hotel and asked at the front desk about the woman looking for the Anderson family. "Room 204, the receptionist said, "but I think she went out for lunch." "Where?" "Probably the diner around the corner. It's the only decent place to eat around here." They walked to the diner in silence. William felt like he was walking to his final judgment. When they stepped inside, William scanned the room. Only a few people were eating. And then he saw her. Sitting alone at a corner table was a young blonde woman reading a book. When she lifted her head to take a sip of water, William saw her face. It was like looking at his wife when she was young. The same delicate features, the same green eyes. And when she raised her arm to call the waiter, he saw the birthmark. It was her. It was his daughter. William froze at the entrance of the diner. 25 years of pain, guilt, and longing crashed into the reality that his little girl was alive and well. "Is it her?" Emma whispered. William could only nod. "Go on," Jason encouraged him. "Go talk to her." "I don't know what to say." "Start with hello," Emma suggested gently. William took a deep breath and walked toward the table. With each step, his heart pounded harder. When he got close, the young woman looked up. For a moment, they just stared at each other in silence. "Excuse me," William said, his voice shaky. "Are you looking for the Anderson family?" "I am," she answered cautiously. "Why?" "Because I'm William Anderson, and I think you're my daughter." The book slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. "Daddy?" she whispered. And in that moment, 25 years of pain melted away. William knelt down and hugged his daughter, crying as he hadn't since the day she disappeared. "My little girl," he sobbed. "My sweet little girl." "Daddy, I knew you were alive," she cried. "I always knew." They held each other for a long time, oblivious to everything around them. Emma and Jason watched with tears in their eyes, holding Olivia, who had woken up and was curiously taking in all the emotion. Finally, they pulled back just enough to look at each other. "What's your name now?" William asked, touching her face as if to make sure she was real. "Charlotte," she answered. "Charlotte Taylor. The family who raised me gave me that name." "Charlotte," William repeated. "It's a beautiful name. What was my name before?" "Emily," William smiled through his tears. Emily Anderson. Emily, she murmured. Sometimes I dreamed about that name. They sat down at the table, and William motioned for Emma and Jason to join them. Charlotte, these are Emma and Jason, he said. They're my family now, and this is Olivia, my goddaughter. Charlotte studied the trio with curiosity. Your family? William quickly told the story of how he had met Emma and how she had brought light back into his life. So you're my siblings? Charlotte asked. If you'd like, Emma replied with a smile. We'd love to have you as a sister. And I'd love to have a sister, Charlotte smiled back. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking. Charlotte shared her story. She had been found on a roadside by a family who couldn't have children. They raised her with great love, but were always honest about her being adopted. When I turned 18, I started looking for my biological family, she explained. But I didn't know where to begin. I only remembered fragments, a cabin in the woods, a tall man who called me my little princess, a dark-haired woman who sang to me. William smiled. Your mother always sang to you before bed. I remembered the melody, Charlotte said, but not the words. It was a lullaby her grandmother used to sing. And how did you lose me? She asked. What happened that day? William took a deep breath. Telling this story was still hard, but he owed her the truth. We were on a family picnic, he began. You were playing near the creek while your mother and I set up the food. When I looked again, you were gone. And then? We searched for you for months. Police, firefighters, volunteers, everyone helped. But you had simply vanished. The family who raised me said they found me alone on a road about 30 miles from here, Charlotte said. I was confused, scared, and couldn't remember how I got there. Someone probably found you lost and tried to take you to town, William suggested, but left you on the road for some reason. Maybe they were afraid of being accused of kidnapping, Jason added. What matters is, you're here now, Emma said, alive and well. And my mother? Charlotte asked hesitantly. What happened to her? William lowered his head. She couldn't recover from the loss. The grief made her ill, and she blamed me for what happened. She passed away 10 years ago. She blamed me. She blamed me, William corrected, for being distracted in that moment. But it wasn't your fault, Charlotte said firmly. I was a child. Children wander off all the time. I know that now, William smiled. Emma helped me understand that carrying this guilt wouldn't bring you back. Charlotte looked at Emma with gratitude. Thank you, she said, for taking care of my father. Thank you for coming back to him, Emma replied. Now he has his whole family again. When evening came, they headed to the cabin. Charlotte was moved to see the place where she had spent her earliest years. It hasn't changed much, she said, looking around. It's smaller than I remembered, but just like in my dreams. Would you like to sleep in your old room? William asked. Some of your things are still there. Charlotte followed him to a small room he had kept untouched all these years. There was a tiny bed, some old toys, and childish drawings still stuck on the wall. My God, she murmured, touching a faded teddy bear. I remembered him. He was your favorite, William said. You wouldn't go anywhere without him. Charlotte hugged the teddy and began to cry. I missed you so much, Dad. Even without clear memories, I felt like there was a hole in my life. I missed you too, my little princess, every single day. They embraced again, and William felt as if a massive weight had lifted from his shoulders. His daughter was alive, she was safe, and she had come home. That night, the two families had dinner together in the cabin. Charlotte shared more about her life. She had studied, earned a degree in psychology, and now worked helping at-risk children. I think I chose this career because of my own experience, she reflected. I wanted to help other children who've gone through trauma. Your mother would be proud, William said. She always wanted to be a teacher to help children. I want to know more about her, Charlotte said. What she was like, what she loved, how you met. I'll tell you everything, William promised. I have photos, letters, memories. I'll share everything with you. And I want to learn more about you too, Charlotte said, looking at Emma and Jason. I want to hear the whole story of how you met. Emma told the entire story, from her escape to reuniting with Jason. Charlotte listened with fascination. "So you saved each other," she observed. "That's one way to see it," and William agreed. "And now we're all family." Olivia chose that moment to make a little noise as if agreeing. Everyone laughed. "Olivia approves," Jason teased. In the days that followed, they spent all their time together. William showed Charlotte all the places she used to play as a child. Emma taught her some recipes she had learned from William. Jason shared funny stories about life in Bozeman, and Charlotte fell in love with her adoptive niece. Olivia seemed to recognize something special in her, always smiling when Charlotte held her. "She's an angel," Charlotte said, making faces at the baby. "Just like her aunt," Emma joked. It was during one of these peaceful afternoons that William made a proposal. "Charlotte, how would you feel about moving here?" "To the cabin?" "Not necessarily the cabin, but to the area. You could work in the nearest town, and we could rebuild our father-daughter relationship." Charlotte grew thoughtful. "It's tempting," she said, "but my job in Chicago—" "There are plenty of children here who need help too," Emma pointed out, "especially families torn apart by financial struggles." "That's true," Charlotte murmured, "and I've always wanted to work in a smaller community where I could really make a difference." "You don't have to decide now," William said. "Think it over." "Actually," Charlotte smiled, "I think I've already decided. I want to stay close to my family. I lost 25 years with you. I don't want to lose another day." William felt his eyes fill with tears for what felt like the 1,000th time that week. "Are you sure?" And absolutely. They spent the rest of the visit making plans. Charlotte would return to Chicago to settle her affairs, then move to the area. William would renovate the cabin to accommodate his daughter, or maybe they'd build a new house. "I want a big house," he said, "for when Emma, Jason, and Olivia come to visit, and for when Charlotte starts her own family." "Dad," Charlotte laughed, "I don't even have a boyfriend." "That'll change," Emma said confidently. "A beautiful, smart woman like you won't stay alone for long." When it was time to say goodbye, it was clear the dynamic had changed forever. They were no longer four separate people who visited occasionally. They were a real family. "I'll be back in 2 months," Charlotte promised, hugging William, "with all my things." "I'll be waiting," he replied, "and I'll start preparing for the new house." "We'll help," Jason said, "with the design, the construction, everything." "Thank you," William smiled, "for everything. For giving me a family when I thought I was doomed to loneliness." "You gave us a family too," Emma answered. "You taught me and Jason that family isn't just blood. It's a choice. It's love. It's caring for each other." William watched the 2 cars drive away, Charlotte heading to Chicago, Emma and Jason returning to Bozeman. But this time he didn't feel alone. For the first time in 25 years, William Anderson had hope for the future. He had plans. He had people to love and who loved him back. The secluded cabin in the woods would still be his home, but it would no longer be a hiding place. It would be the heart of a family that had found each other through pain, forgiveness, and the human capacity to start anew. The end. Now we'd like to hear your thoughts on this story of overcoming hardships and reunion. Do you believe William made the right choice in helping Emma? Leave your comment telling us what you thought and where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.